Hello and welcome to another recommendation video. As always, these videos are not designed to be full-on detailed reviews. This is just me recommending a game to you because I've been enjoying it recently. So first I'll explain what the game's about and most of what it has to offer, then we'll talk about why I've been enjoying it, and after that we'll close the video with a quick conclusion. So, what is Cyberdimension Neptunia 4 Goddesses Online? Well, funnily enough, it's actually a completely single-player action RPG, even though its name would suggest otherwise. This is because it's set in an online MMO world instead of physically being one, if that makes any sense. This game is also a spin-off of the mainline Neptunia games and was the first one to be released on the PS4 instead of the Vita. It sits in the MMO Trapped genre, which you can find in popular games and franchises such as Sword Art Online and .hack. The story begins as the 4 CPUs, Neptune, Noir, Blanc and Vert, are selected as beta testers for the upcoming 4 Goddesses Online MMO. The world inside this MMO is known as Alsgard, and upon logging in, they meet Bouquet, who is essentially the player's guide for the game. Neptune and the rest of the girls discover that they're the fabled chosen ones who need to revive the 4 goddesses of legend to defeat the evil Demon King. And this next part might be a little hard to explain, but do bear with me. In other Neptunia games, the 4 main girls are known as CPUs, and they have super forms that they can transform into when needed. In this game, the 4 goddesses of legend that they need to awaken are those super forms. So while you're playing as Neptune or Vert, or whoever you want to play as, you won't be transforming into the super forms because the 4 goddesses are those forms. They even talk to your characters and appear as completely different people. I suppose it's kind of a meta thing because, as an example, you can play as Neptune and have her super form in the party right next to her, even though they are technically the same person. This can happen because Neptune is supposed to be a real person who's playing the MMO, and the super version is a purely in-game character. Hopefully, if I've explained that well enough, it should make some kind of sense to you. Pretty much all of your setup and character management will be done at the game's hub, which is called Wishuel. There's plenty of vendors and facilities here that you can make use of, including a guild where you can accept quests, stores to buy and sell various items, a blacksmith to upgrade your gear, a training area, the bulletin board where you can play online with other people, and a cathedral to save your game, view the gallery, and activate prayers that give you buffs for your next quest. Gameplay-wise, it's a pretty simple hack-and-slash style game with some skills you can activate by spending SP. Each character has a set of stats, as you might expect, and these are HP, SP, Strength, Intelligence, and Defense. Most people are probably familiar with these kind of stats, but for anyone who might be new to RPGs, that's essentially your health, magic points, attack power, magic power, and resistance to damage. You'll generally always have a party of 4 characters. You control one character and the game's AI will control the others. You can of course change their tactics to make them more aggressive or passive, etc. I found I didn't really need to mess with this setting too much, but you can if you want to. To access the dungeons that you'll be fighting through, you simply need to go to the map screen and select the one you want to play. As you progress through the game, more will become available, and you can revisit any of them freely to grind for XP or items. During a normal battle, you can perform a standard combo by pressing square on the PlayStation 4 or 5, and each hit in this combo actually restores 1 point of SP, so it is worth using. Hitting the enemy or being hit by the enemy will also raise the Awakening gauge, which you can activate by pressing L3. When you enter the Awakening state, your SP refills pretty quickly and your skills become more powerful. Later in the game, you'll also get access to a very strong ultimate attack. If you activate Awakening at level 3 and press L3 again while in that state, you'll perform the ultimate attack and consume the entire Awakening gauge. Your standard skills are used by holding down L1 and pressing the appropriate face buttons, and you can unlock more skills as you level up your character. There's a guard button on R2 and a dodge on L2. Although for my playthrough, I actually swapped the dodge button to circle, which was originally the interact button. So I had dodge on circle and interact on L2. It just felt better in combat for me personally. Lastly, in terms of combat, I should mention the lock-on and break gauge system. If you press the R1 button, you can toggle a lock-on for the various enemies in front of you. Also, as with a lot of other games, you can move the lock-on to other enemies with the right stick. Once you've locked onto your target, you'll see their information at the top left of the screen. This shows their HP and their break gauge, as well as some elemental weaknesses if they have one. The HP bar is obviously the monster's health, but the break gauge is a bit different. Basically, reducing this gauge to 0 will cause the enemy to break and become unable to move or attack for a short time, giving you a window to attack with everything you've got. This is especially important for boss fights as they rarely stagger or flinch and they can hit very hard. During your playthrough, you'll find a lot of events in the hub area and a few in the dungeons themselves. Story progressing events are marked with an orange exclamation mark, and the side events are marked with a blue one. I would suggest doing all of the blues first before moving on. These events often have some sort of funny or weird or even fan servicey theme going on, and not many of them are voiced either, but they are pretty cool. Plus, there are trophies tied to most of them, so they are worth doing. I should also say that the game has both original Japanese voice acting and a full English dub as well, so the choice is yours. Oh, and speaking of fan service, besides some of these side events and a few flirty lines here and there isn't really too much of it. It's not constant or anything like that, not that I'd mind if it was, but I know some people don't like an overabundance of it, so I thought it was worth mentioning. In my opinion, this game has light or slightly more than light fan service for those who are interested. And with that said, you probably have a good idea of what the game's about at this point, so let's talk about why I've been enjoying it. Firstly, I would just like to say that I got the Platinum Trophy in this game over the Christmas break, and it was really fun to do. In fact, I think I got maybe 3 or 4 Platinums over the holidays, and come to think of it, one of those games is going to be the focus of an upcoming recommendation video, so look out for that. But anyway, yeah, the 4 Goddesses Online was really more fun than I thought it would be. It's not going to be the best game you've ever played, obviously, and there is a tiny bit of jankiness to it, but overall I found it really enjoyable. At first, I found it really difficult to actually fight the enemies. I was playing it in a similar way to a standard hack and slash or Dynasty Warriors game, and my attacks were just missing everything and I couldn't really get it. I struggled for maybe, 2 or 3 missions, something like that, and then started using the lock-on feature for each and every enemy I fought, and it just transformed the gameplay for me. Now obviously the lock-on feature is there for a reason, but in some of these games it can sometimes be an optional thing, you can use it if you want to. But I do kind of think it's necessary in this game specifically. So I guess if you do decide to pick this up, please use the lock-on feature from the very beginning because pretty much all of the attacks and skills in the game simply don't work very well without locking on. I suppose you could consider this a bit of a negative point, but after you learn to lock on, it gives the game a vast improvement in playability. And also, while we're talking about a couple of issues, I did find it hard to see what was going on sometimes because of the visual effects. Some of them anyway, are so large and loud. When you mix that with the fact that most of the enemies don't stagger or flinch unless you break them, it makes it a bit hard to tell what's going on rare occasions. It's not constant, it's just occasionally. It's not, that bad or anything like that, but I do think it's worth mentioning as I don't want to misrepresent the game and say it's perfect when it's not. But in terms of what I liked, that's pretty much everything else. I mean, I've always liked the character designs of the Neptunia girls, but I like how they gave them a fantasy game makeover in this one. I thought they looked pretty cool. You initially get the 4 CPU girls, Neptune, Noir, Blanc and Vert, but you'll also unlock the younger sisters, Nepgear, Umi, Rom and Ram, and you even get to play as the goddesses themselves for a total of 12 characters, all of which can be leveled up, equipped with different gear, accessories and gems. There's just a nice amount of stuff to do, collect and see, plus the Platinum doesn't take you 1,000 hours, which is always nice. Once I got used to locking onto everything, the combat went from kinda bad to kinda great. Some enemies can be annoying to fight, but I would say in general it's got a really good combat system. Another good thing is that even if the combat does start to grate on you towards the end, the game just isn't that long, so it probably won't wear out its welcome with you. The main story can be completed in, I would say, probably 15 hours, and if you want to platinum it, you're probably looking at around 22 to 25 hours. Now, I don't know if this is controversial to say, but I really do enjoy the English dub of the Neptunia games. I just find it really amusing and funny, and at first I actually thought Neptune was voiced by the same person who did Tiny Tina's voice from Borderlands. Now I know they're not the same person, but at certain times I could have sworn it was her. Either way, I really liked it, and I thought it was honestly one of the better dubs I've personally heard. And I think lastly I wanted to mention that I really appreciated the simplicity of the character setup. This game takes place inside an MMO, so I was thinking that they might try to sort of overcomplicate the gameplay systems, but to my surprise, it was all very straightforward and very easy to understand. I really had a good time picking the right gems to further enhance a character's strengths and crafting new weapons to make them even more powerful. I don't mind complex systems, of course, but sometimes I just want to be able to intuitively understand what I'm doing without having to learn everything on a much deeper level. I think we all feel like that sometimes when it comes to games, and this game's simplicity allowed me to really sit back and just enjoy what I was doing, rather than getting that feeling of, am I playing this wrong, And I think that's about enough for this section, so let's move on to a quick conclusion. After fully completing 4 Goddesses Online, I think it's an interesting little RPG. It might not be an incredible game, but it is a fun one, and that's important to me personally. It has a very meta narrative which I thought was pretty cool, and it's got good gameplay that's enjoyable to partake in for the most part. Ultimately, it's a decent spin-off, and in my opinion it's worth playing, especially if you're a fan of Neptunia games and the characters. It's not in the same genre as the mainline games, but it does work pretty well as an action RPG. I enjoyed my time with it, and I've already picked up quite a few other Neptunia games for the channel, so look out for videos on those. So there you go, now you know why I recommend Cyberdimension Neptunia 4 Goddesses Online. You can get it right now on PS4 via download or of course a physical copy. It's also available on PC if that's where you prefer to play. If you enjoyed the video, I really hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel, and if you like what I do and want to offer your support, please check out the first link in the video description down below. But with all that said, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.